is Bill Bender from the Sporting News joins us right now. Always enjoy our conversations with Bill. I hope the offseason has been good to you, and you get a couple of more months of downtime, Bill, but it's going to get here in a hurry. Yep, certainly is on the way. There was a story that popped up yesterday that originated in Big Ten country about the possibility of the Big Ten doing away with the requirement for teams to play a non-conference Power 5 opponent. What are you hearing about that? Do you think it's likely that ends up being the case, or is this just kind of conjecture at this point? Ooh. Do we lose anything if we go away from the requirement, assuming it's at 9 games and we don't go to your idea where you play 10 conference games? And I don't know that you're going to convince any coach or commissioner or athletic director to go to 10 conference games, as much as we might like to see that. Are we doing a disservice if we take away the Power 5 non-conference and we kind of lose some of those cool intersectional matchups?
Well, I mean, right now, see the benefit of playing them in the 4-team era, because really it comes down to this: you can't lose twice. There hasn't been a 2-loss playoff team yet. We've debated it. We've tried to push one in there, but it's never happened. You know, Michigan, for example, last year, their non-conference schedule was on Western Michigan and Hawaii. And it didn't matter at the end because they went undefeated. So I think as we get into a 12-team, I think your strength of schedule, instead of just using it as a talking point, has to count for something if it's determining some of these at-large bids.
I just wonder if, I mean, we know that we are going to see two-loss teams in a 12-team playoff, and I'm okay with that. And if we get a conference champion, we could see a team with 3 or 4 losses potentially in. In those at-large spots, do you see a scenario where a 3-loss team gets into the 12-team playoff with 6 at-large spots?
I think it'll happen. I just don't know, who it will be or what the scenario is, but I'm sure it will. And that's what I'm saying. If you're my 10-game schedule idea ain't going to happen, but if I was the SEC, I would consider it. Remember the year that they played 10 games during COVID, and then what did they have? They had the national champion. They had Texas A&M that could have been in. I think they had 4 New Year's Day 6 teams. So in a 12-team setup type year in 2020, as much as I hate revisiting that year, the SEC would have had a very strong playoff year.
It almost feels like you listened to our show yesterday, because I said for all of the bad that came from 2020, and there was plenty of bad that came from 2020, the 10-game conference schedule for the SEC was awesome. Now, the flip side of that, and this is what Brian Haydad has argued over and over, is that doesn't make sense for a team like Mississippi State, for a team like Ole Miss or Arkansas or South Carolina. So for the mid-tier teams in the SEC, and we all believe that ultimately they're going to get to a 9-game conference schedule, Haydad has pushed that 8 makes a whole lot more sense, and you're voting against self-interest other than money if you vote for a 9-game schedule and you're not one of the elite teams.
Fair. I mean, because they want to get to 7 and 8 and get to a bowl game, but you know what? You're in the SEC. That would be my comeback. Texas A&M didn't plan on going 5 and 7 last year, but they did. You've got to go out and compete and win those games. And, it's the same thing in the Big Ten. It's, okay, does it not benefit Minnesota? Well, if you're going to make the money that you make in that conference, then you need to do the things to take the right competitive steps. And that mid-tier, I mean, Mississippi State, they've been number 1 since the playoffs started. They've had, during the season. Ole Miss is was in the playoff hunt into November last year. South Carolina's had good teams. So I get it, and I'm not going to, disrespect somebody else's opinion. I just don't agree with it because you're in the SEC. They're the same people that are claiming all these national championships for the conference, and that always kind of is like, but you're not Alabama.
Yeah, it's a good point. What are we're not quite into like what are all the storylines and talking season and all of that yet. But as you think ahead to this upcoming year, is there something that stands out to you that you're really excited about watching, a story that you're really excited about seeing develop over the course of the season?
Well, I mean, not one in particular. I think there's teams that we're Georgia, obviously, is anybody going to stop that machine? You look at their schedule, they're probably going to win their first 10 games. I think there's a fascination around Alabama for me right now because, one, I don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Two, and I just painted this picture a couple times this week, but what if Texas beats them? Can you imagine if Steve Sarkisian goes into Tuscaloosa with Quinn Ewers and they win that game, which is entirely possible? There's going to be a lot of takes if that happens.
Related to what? Moving into the SEC or a new king or Texas is back or all the above?
Or Steve Sarkisian going in and beating Nick Saban, on a year where Alabama has quarterback uncertainty that they haven't had probably since Jake Coker, who actually did win a national championship. But, I mean, so many strands of that, the Texas is back thing. Texas's offense should be elite this year. They've got two really good receivers around Ewers. They've got an NFL tight end. They're going to score a bunch of points. You go back to last year's game, they should have won. They could have won if not for Bryce Young. So that game is definitely, as much as we've talked about Dion and everything else this offseason, kind of got that game circled as a huge flex point for the season.
Yeah, it's got a chance to be really, really fun in week number 2. What about some of the other early non-conference matchups involving SEC teams? Does Florida at Utah do anything for you in week 1? Because you talk about quarterback uncertainty. Yeah, Alabama's got it, but they got a bunch of really good pieces around the quarterback spot. Florida's coming off a not Florida-like year. Their win total is what, 5.5, 6.5 this year? And they got no idea who's going to be the quarterback.
Yeah, and, you look at it and the fact that they had the number 4 pick in the NFL draft and had kind of a disappointing first season with Billy Napier, there's going to be a lot of on that hype, and they're going on the road. You don't see SEC schools go that far west for an opener often. If not, I think I remember Georgia going out to Arizona State once. And, from there, it's, there's a couple more big games. LSU, Florida State's going to be a top 10 showdown right out of the go. Jaden Daniels and Jordan Travis, a couple Heisman dark horses. Be a really fun game. It was a lot of fun last year, and I remember overreacting to it. I could see something very similar coming up this year.
All right, last thing for you. Tennessee is intriguing to me. I think Josh Heupel obviously has done a really, really good job. There's no Hendon Hooker. You saw Joe Milton III up close when he was at Michigan. Didn't work out. He comes in. He's named the starter. Doesn't work out. Stays put at Tennessee, which is rare in this era of college football. Looked pretty good in the opportunities that he had at the end of last season. Are you buying Joe Milton being what the Vols need to not miss a beat, or are we going to see the old Joe Milton emerge?
He's got to stay accurate. He's got to. That's what made Hooker so special. Around 70% completion percentage. Now we know Joe Milton's got an NFL arm, right? It's huge, and he played very well in those last couple starts, especially against Clemson. He's a veteran player. I think, in terms of a quarterback, he has the most range. Like, he could be this year's Anthony Richardson, or he could be undrafted. On how this year goes. So there is definitely a high fascination factor, especially because they got a 5-star kid behind him. So Josh Heupel's got it going on.
Yeah. Low floor, high ceiling for Joe Milton III. I think it might be a good way to put it. Bill, always appreciate your time. Great catching up. Hope the summer's good to you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.